Can the small really topple the great? It is the story of David and Goliath, played out across all of history. Empires seem unbeatable, with huge armies, endless gold, and vast lands. Yet history is filled with surprising twists. Smaller nations, scrappy rebels, and determined underdogs sometimes get crushed, but sometimes they win. And when they do, the world is never quite the same again. We will explore what happens when the little guy decides to fight back. Our story moves south along the Nile, where Nubia claims the Pharaoh's crown. For centuries, Egypt was the superpower of the Nile Valley, the land of pyramids and pharaohs. To its south lay Nubia, a kingdom rich in gold and its own proud culture. Egypt saw Nubia as a resource colony, dominating it with forts and armies. But Nubia was a resilient civilization. They learned from their powerful neighbor, adopting their gods and writing, but never lost their own identity. They were playing a long game, waiting for their moment. And around 747 BCE, as Egypt weakened, that moment came. Here's the twist. The Nubian king Pi marches north and takes Egypt. Pi saw himself as the true heir to the pharaoh's traditions. He and his successors conquered Egypt, establishing the 25th dynasty. For nearly a century, black pharaohs from Nubia ruled a combined empire. Their rule created a powerful blend of cultures, a fusion of Egyptian and Nubian styles. Eventually, they were pushed out by invading Assyrians, but the lesson was clear: an underdog could wear the crown of the empire next door. Across the sea in 1904, a rising Japan catches Imperial Russia off guard. In 1904, a rising Japan challenged the enormous Russian Empire. Japan had spent decades rapidly modernizing its military and industry, and had ambitions for territory Russia controlled. Most expected the Russian bear to crush the small island challenger. The world was in for a surprise. On February 8, 1904, Japanese torpedo boats launched a surprise attack on the Russian fleet at Port Arthur, crippling several of its best ships. This bold first strike set the tone for the war. On land, Japanese forces captured Port Arthur after a brutal struggle. But the decisive moment came at sea, when Russia's Baltic fleet sailed 7 months to confront the Japanese Navy at the Battle of Tsushima. With better training and brilliant tactics to utterly annihilate the Russian fleet. Of the 38 Russian ships that entered the battle, 21 were sunk, and most of the rest were captured. It was one of the most lopsided naval victories in all of history. Russia was humiliated and forced to sue for peace. The impact of this victory was seismic. It was the first time in the modern era that an Asian power had defeated a major European power. The myth of European military invincibility was shattered. For Japan, the win was a massive boost to its national pride and its status as a new world power. For Russia, the defeat triggered widespread unrest and revolution back home, weakening the Tsar's regime. Across Asia and the colonized world, people took note. Power was not permanent. The established order could be challenged. The Underdog's victory in 1905 redrew the map of power in the 20th century. Photo reel montage narrates the shockwaves. Japan's upset rewrites power. Tsushima shatters assumptions. Asia awakens. Empires reassess. Naval doctrine pivots to speed, gunnery, and wireless control. Revolutions simmer. Cabinets panic. Newspapers scream. Colonized peoples whisper, then organize. Students debate. Generals study hard lessons. Alliances tilt. Investors shift shipyards east. By war's end, a new century's order is born. The trail leads into Afghanistan's mountains, where great powers learn hard limits. Can a nation's land help it defeat a mighty invader? Afghanistan, the graveyard of empires, is the perfect place to ask. In the 20th century, 2 superpowers learned this lesson. First, the Soviet Union. In 1979, the Soviets invaded, expecting an easy victory. They were wrong. Their modern mechanized army of tanks and helicopters was neutralized by the terrain. Tanks were useless in narrow passes. Helicopters were vulnerable to fire from the cliffs above. The Afghan fighters, the Mujahideen, knew the land. They used hit-and-run attacks, then melted back into the mountains. Most famously, they supplied the fighters with Stinger anti-aircraft missiles. These shoulder-fired weapons allowed the Mujahideen to shoot down Soviet helicopters. The Soviets found themselves bogged down in a brutal, costly, and unwinnable war. Logistics buckled, costs spiraled, victory slipped away. The morale of their soldiers plummeted. The cost in blood and treasure became too high for Moscow to bear. After 10 long years of fighting, the last Soviet troops withdrew in 1989. The superpower had been defeated. The war was a major factor in the eventual collapse of the Soviet Union itself. Decades later, the United States and its allies would face a similar challenge in the same rugged land, fighting a different enemy, but facing the same brutal geography and determined local resistance. The story of Afghanistan shows that even the strongest armies can be broken when they fight an enemy who has the land itself as their greatest ally and a fierce will to defend their home. Over the ridgelines, rotor thumps, convoys thread valleys. Units deploy, bleed, rotate, then withdraw. Flags come down. Villages endure. Families flee and rebuild. Terrain dictates tempo. Seasons grind machines. Advisors change, missions rename, but the mountains remain. The lesson hardens. Home ground and willpower outlast empires. The strongest tire while locals persist. Fast forward to Southeast Asia. France colonizes Vietnam. Nationalist leader Ho Chi Minh declared independence post-World War II. The French refused, sparking a bloody war. France's modern army faced the Viet Minh, who had popular support and mastered guerrilla warfare. In 1954, the Viet Minh crushed the French at the decisive Battle of Dien Bien Phu. A humiliated France withdrew, but the fight wasn't over. Vietnam was divided, setting the stage for another conflict. Then a superpower steps in. The United States brings overwhelming force, sending 500,000 troops, expecting technology to crush the North Vietnamese. But they were fighting more than an army. They were fighting the idea of a unified Vietnam. Like the French before them, the Americans found themselves stuck in a quagmire. The war became deeply unpopular back home. In 1973, the US withdrew. 2 years later, North Vietnam conquered the South, unifying the country. So, beyond guns and terrain, what is the secret weapon of the underdog? Often, it is something you cannot see or touch. It is an idea. It is the powerful feeling of fighting for your own home, your own culture, your own freedom. When a large empire invades a smaller country, the soldiers of the empire are often fighting for abstract reasons. They are fighting for policy, for resources, for a distant leader's ambition. They are far from home, in a strange land, surrounded by people who do not want them there. Their morale can be fragile. For the people of the invaded land, the stakes are completely different. They are fighting for everything that matters to them. They are defending their families, their villages, their way of life, their ancestors' graves. Their fight is personal and immediate. This gives them a powerful psychological advantage. They have a clear and simple reason to resist, a reason that every man, woman, and child can understand. A shared purpose creates deep resilience, turning an entire population into a weapon. An occupying army can defeat a regular army, but how does it defeat millions who refuse to cooperate? Where every farmer is a potential fighter and every village a hidden base? This problem has plagued empires throughout history. The fight becomes a struggle for cultural survival, a moral advantage that allows the small to stand against the great, and sometimes to win. But does the underdog ever truly fight alone? Rarely. In the great chess game of global politics, the enemy of my enemy is often my friend. When a small power challenges a big empire, other big powers are always watching. If that empire is their rival, they see a golden opportunity. By helping the small power, they can weaken their competitor without risking direct war. This outside help can take many forms. Cargo plane drops supplies with parachutes over rugged terrain. Money flowing in secretly. Simple rifles, sophisticated missiles, training, intelligence, diplomatic support. The Cold War is the perfect example. The United States, the Soviet Union. Whenever one got involved, the other backed the opposite side. Soviets invade Afghanistan. The United States arms the Mujahideen. The United States fights in Vietnam. The Soviet Union and China supply North Vietnam with tanks, jets, air defense systems. This support was a game changer. It let smaller powers match technology and fight for years. But external support is a double-edged sword. It can give strength to win, and it makes the conflict bigger and more complicated. The local struggle becomes a proxy war. The war gets longer, bloodier, harder to end. The goals of outside helpers may not match the locals. Helpers want to bleed their rival. Locals want freedom. After the big power leaves, weapons can fuel devastating civil wars. Afghanistan. Outside aid can be the key to victory, but it comes at a high price. It transforms a local conflict into a global one and raises the stakes. The small power might win independence, only to be tangled with another powerful patron. The arrival of a friend in need can level the playing field. Cargo plane drops supplies again, but it ensures the game is played for much higher stakes, with consequences that last generations. Quiet memorials, rusting hulls, and scarred valleys remind us outside aid can win battles, but peace needs restraint, reconciliation, and foresight. If you can't outmuscle your opponent, can you outsmart them? Absolutely. History is full of examples where brains beat brawn. A smaller army that uses clever tactics or superior technology can often defeat a much larger force. Think of the Battle of Agincourt in 1415. A small, tired English army, a massive French army of heavily armored knights. The English had a secret weapon, the longbow, English archers firing faster and farther than crossbowmen. Mud turned into a killing ground, the flower of French nobility wiped out by common yeomen. Technology has always been a great equalizer. Gunpowder and firearms made the armored knight obsolete. A peasant with a gun could kill a nobleman from a distance. New weapons can change the balance of power. Japanese fast ships at Tsushima were superior to older Russian ships. Stinger missiles given to the Afghan Mujahideen. Stingers neutralized the Soviets' helicopter gunships. A small force with the right tool can punch above its weight. It's not just about shiny new toys. It's about how you use them. This is where tactics come in. Guerrilla warfare is the classic underdog tactic. Don't meet the big army in a pitched battle. Refuse to fight on their terms. Speed, surprise, knowledge of the local terrain, attack supply lines, assassinate leaders, create a constant state of fear and uncertainty. This is how the Vietnamese fought the French and the Americans. Wear down a larger enemy's will to fight, make occupation too costly. Smart tactics and disruptive technology is a potent recipe for an upset. The empire often becomes a victim of its own success. It gets big, slow, and predictable. Generals trained for one kind of war are slow to adapt. The underdog must be creative and innovative. Find new ways to fight. The old ways lead to defeat. Constant adaptation lets a smaller power find the giant's weak spot and deliver a painful blow. Zooming out, local sparks become global ripples. Rules bend, borders shift, minds change. So, what is the final score when David gives Goliath a black eye? The world changes. These clashes are never isolated events. They send out ripples that can reshape everything. The most immediate change is on the map. Borders are redrawn. New countries are born. Old empires shrink. But the changes go much deeper than just lines on a piece of paper. The very idea of power is challenged. People around the world see that the mighty can fall. This can inspire other groups to seek their own freedom, starting a chain reaction of rebellion and change. These conflicts also force a change in thinking. The defeated empire goes through a painful period of soul-searching. Why did we lose? What did we do wrong? For the United States, the Vietnam War and its long skepticism about foreign intervention. For the Soviet Union, Afghanistan exposed systemic weaknesses and hastened collapse. The victorious underdog also changes. It can become a symbol of resistance. It faces the immense challenge of building a new nation from the ashes of war. The global balance of power can be completely reordered. Think 1905. Japan shocks Russia, and everyone wakes up. Suddenly, attention tilts toward the Pacific. After World War II, Empires crack and let go. New flags appear, dozens of them. The room at the UN gets a lot more crowded. Trade changes course and new partnerships pop up. Old grudges fade or flare right back up. Either way, the world doesn't look the same. Here's the simple takeaway. Power isn't just troop numbers or piles of cash. Sure, you need muscle, and money helps. Plus, leaders who can stick with a plan and people willing to back it. But most of all, you need good ideas. Great empires feel permanent, until they don't. Small players with a real reason to fight can shake them. They move smart, find allies, and step by step, they change history.